Welcome to the Front 3, the show where I recap 3 games, 3 stories, 3 stars, and 3 stooges from the Premier League game week. Let's jump right in with Manchester United versus Brighton. This game kicked off the weekend and it started off well with United on top, putting in some really dangerous crosses and a good high press. Amad Diallo's final end product wasn't good enough at times, but he looked bright, and United's new 4-2-2-2 seemed to be working well. But Brighton scored essentially off their first good chance, with a loose ball falling to Kaoru Mitoma and then being sprayed across the 6-yard box for an easy finish. As the game progressed though, United continued to look dangerous, particularly through their fullbacks, and a combination of Mazraoui and Diallo sent a ball into an offside Marcus Rashford, who managed to bundle it in for a goal that didn't end up counting, but was great nonetheless. Joshua Zirkzee then came on at halftime for Mason Mount, maybe to give that finishing threat that United lacked noticeably in the first half. The Mazraoui and Diallo combination came good in the second half, as the right back played through for Amad to cut inside on his left and finally provide the end product required, with a low hard finish. United thought they had struck again with an excellently worked counter that ended up in a cutback and open look for Alejandro Garnacho off the bench, but the sliding substitute Joshua Zirkzee got a touch before the ball went over the line, which ruled the goal out for offside in one of the funniest moments of the weekend. In the 5th minute of stoppage time though, United's efforts were foiled with a bit of lazy defending. They gave Simon Adingra a second chance at resecuring possession at the top of their box, and then let 2 Brighton players sneak in at the back post for their pick at an easy header. In the end, it was João Pedro who nodded home for the winner, electrifying the MX crowd and giving Brighton 2 wins from 2 to start the season. There were a lot of great performances from across both squads, and United should feel hard done by to walk away with nothing. But what separated the sides were Brighton's defensive organization, more impactful substitutes, and cutting edge in front of goal. One tactical point of note is that Casemiro didn't look as solid as he did in the first game of the season. A bit slow and exposed, but it was largely in the second half when the press got sloppy and he was isolated on the counter. Erik ten Hag will need to figure out how to sustain the front third press or have a change of gears later in games to protect themselves from the counter. Arsenal vs Villa is my second game, and it was the most hotly anticipated match of the weekend for me, being the first matchup between last season's top 4 sides. The opening period was pretty back and forth, with good spells of possession for both teams. The half was largely about countering back and forth, but the game was lacking final quality. Morgan Rogers and Kai Havertz had some disappointing final balls and wasted shots, and both sides defended well. Each team had a solid chance in the half, both coming off of the press and turnovers. Saka's driven effort was turned away, and Ollie Watkins spooned a chance set up by Morgan Rogers after a dispossession at the top of the box. Interestingly, Arsenal seemed to let Villa attack them all first half, going into halftime with Villa slightly on top, and playing a very open game. In the second period though, Arsenal got their goal after a brilliant disguised pass from Martin Odegaard, and a fortunate bounce in the box to Leandro Trossard, who always seems to have a clutch goal in him. They doubled the lead shortly after with another good sequence finished off by Thomas Partey, past a slightly disappointed Emi Martinez. Odegaard also should have added a third later when he blazed it over the bar. While Arsenal did run away victors 2-0, it was a really even match that provided a lot of entertainment for the neutral. A first-half scuffle between John McGinn, Saliba, White, and Watkins, as well as a late tackle from William Saliba that was celebrated like a game-winning goal, underscored the intensity and physicality of the game. It was a really good early-season fixture. I have a few big takeaways from the game for Arsenal. First, it was good to see Timber in action. Next, the intentionality of playing through Gabriel Martinelli, which was working in limited stints, is very noticeable, and you can tell that Arteta is putting an emphasis on getting the ball on his feet this season. It would be rude of me not to mention David Raya's save early in the second half, after the ball careened off the bar, and looked to be an easy header before Raya came back off his line with an acrobatic save. As always, Arsenal looked better after taking control of the game, and I wonder if they'll leave it as open as they did in the first half in future fixtures. For Aston Villa, Morgan Rogers again was one of the best players on the field. He's so good on the ball, like an Adama Traore physicality with the skill of a true attacking midfielder. But he does have some growing to do in his decision-making. One particular moment that was absolutely incredible was in the stoppage time of the first half, when he took the ball around Thomas Partey and then used his speed and strength to get it back and draw a foul. After Matty Cash was injured in the first half, new fullback Nedeljkovic looked good, and I don't see why he might not get lots of minutes this season. Ollie Watkins on the other end of the pitch looked a little off it, but I'm sure he's going to come good as the season progresses. Overall, if I'm a Villa fan, I wouldn't be panicking. Arsenal is very good and this game could have gone either way. The third game of the week has to be the 6-2 thriller between Chelsea and Wolves. Most notably, Chelsea played differently than they did against Man City. Madueke and Mudryk started on the wings, and they really emphasized an openness to their play. It's not quite what I expected from an Enzo Maresca side in terms of the levels of control he usually demands, but it may be a better system for his personnel. The game got off to a crazy start, with Nico Jackson having a great finish and making some great runs. But despite Chelsea's attacking firepower, I still have concerns with the frailty of their defense. There were some great Wolves chances that went unfinished early on, with an offside call, missed open header, and a good cutback gone astray sparing Chelsea's blushes. But Mateus Cunha did get an equalizer eventually, with Robert Sanchez again looking questionable between the sticks. Ryan Ait-Nouri's attacking flair and skill is so impressive, and he could get a big move at some point soon. Cunha hit the bar before the half was out, but it was Chelsea who took the lead on the break, with Cole Palmer chipping the keeper from a great Nico Jackson knockdown. Not to be outdone, Larsson scored off a free kick to equalize for Wolves before halftime was out, again adding to the Chelsea defense worries. But in the second half, the Blues' attacking quality shone through. Madueke, who looked very dangerous all game, managed to pull through with an awesome second-half hat-trick, with Cole Palmer picking up a trifecta of assists on essentially the same pass out to the winger. I don't think this style is totally sustainable, but Madueke should definitely be in the side, and Cole Palmer at attacking midfield could be an answer to some of Chelsea's creativity problems from last season. Still, it leaves the likes of Felix, Nkunku, Dewsbury Hall, Lavia, and Neto, among others, on the bench, but Mudryk surely won't keep starting, so one of those can be inserted into the lineup. Plus, 5 substitutes may benefit Chelsea more than anyone else, with how much depth they feature. For Wolves, it was odd to see them struggle on the defensive end, when usually attack is their issue, but they did lose Max Kilman to West Ham. If they can sort the defense out, they showed enough offensively for me to say that they should be fine this year. Shout out to Mario Lemina for an amazing volleyed strike that was unfortunately ruled out for offside. Now let's get into the 3 stories of the week. First is Crystal Palace unraveling. 2 losses from 2 against teams that they need to be beating if they have top 10 or even European aspirations. But Palace are underperforming their XG through 2 games, so on the field I'm less concerned. They did have plenty of chances in their 2-0 loss to West Ham. What I'm looking at though is their late transfer business. Joachim Anderson to Fulham and Jordan Ayew to Leicester are slightly odd, if understandable transfers. Shadi Riyad is clearly preferred long-term, and Ayew is on the older end. But will they lose more players, and how will their uncertainty affect their performances this season? Will Gay end up in the black and white of Newcastle? Will speculation hit Eze or Wharton? I'm going to be keeping an eye on how Palace's squad develops. On the opposite side of the transfer story, Brighton just keeps recruiting. When you thought Brighton had enough exciting attacking players, they pull in Jorginho Rutter from Leeds and Matt O'Reilly from Celtic. That brings their incomings to 8, all of whom are 24 and under. Not only that, but they splash the cash on several of the players. Upwards of 45 million euros on Rutter, around 30 on Yankuba Minta, Mats Wiefer, Brian Gruda, and O'Reilly, and 20 on winger Ibrahim Osman. I would have loved to see a center back come through the door as well, and maybe a right back, but they're building something really exciting down on the south coast. I think a Europa League spot is within reach. Finally, some concerns on the pitch for my third story, and they're on the blue side of Merseyside. Everton were absolutely run ragged by Tottenham, aside starting with Wilson Audebert in his debut, Brennan Johnson, and Dejan Kulusevski in midfield. They look heavy-legged so early in the season, which is truly concerning. Their defense is also looking porous, which is their hallmark, and they invite lots of pressure. Spurs players were lining up for shots in and around the box, and even though he had a bad performance, Jordan Pickford had no chance on multiple occasions. Not only that, but they have no line-breaking passers or creativity up front to create chances, and no real metronome in midfield either. I thought they would be disciplined and seasoned enough to pick up results, but right now they look like conceding several goals a game, no matter the opponent. Their rugged English defenders even let Romero walk into the 6-yard box to score a header between them, which should be a strength for Everton. To be fair, they've played Tottenham and Brighton so far, 2 free-flowing attacking sides, so the real test will be in weeks to come against mid- and lower-table sides. But right now, I'm concerned for their future in the Premier League. Moving on now to my 3 stars of the week. Number 3, it's Manchester United's new signing Noussair Mazraoui. After just 2 games, I'm convinced that this was an excellent transfer. The Moroccan is an attacking threat in possession, in a way that Aaron Wan-Bissaka just couldn't offer. He exudes an Ajax breed of football, so comfortable in possession, but also disciplined and patient. Mazraoui also has physical traits essential for success in the Prem, with good recovery speed and instincts. Even in a loss, he was one of the players who most stood out to me. Credit goes to Diogo Dalot for taking up the left-back role as well, to accommodate Mazraoui on his more comfortable side. My second star of the week is also a new signing in Manchester. It's the brilliant Savinho. Through 2 games, he has looked incredibly dynamic and threatening. He won a penalty for City's first goal against Ipswich with really quick acceleration past Leif Davis. For a flair player, he also pressed keeper Muric to set up Kevin De Bruyne with an open net. And truly, throughout the game, he absolutely ran Ipswich ragged. To be trusted by Pep to start the opening games is a big statement. People have been saying that Pep is going back to more conventional wingers, but Savinho also has the technical quality and decision-making that the Spaniard requires out of his players. So far, the Brazilian, in my opinion, has outplayed Doku and has Grealish sitting on the bench. Yes, it was just Ipswich, but he looked as good against Chelsea as well. Of course, I could have picked Haaland. I mean, his second and third goals were absolutely incredible, but what's the fun in that? Finally, though, my first star is an old veteran of the Premier League. For a Brighton side with so much exciting talent, it's 33-year-old Danny Welbeck who spearheads the attack. He's a goal scorer, facilitator, and leader for one of the most exciting teams in the league. I admire that he makes good decisions with the ball at his feet, unlike many players at the top level who tend to be relatively predictable, or at least selfish. We've seen him shoot, dribble, and pass to great effect in these first 2 game weeks. He takes up great positions and is a focal point for all of the dynamism that surrounds him in the squad. Welbeck looks to be at the top of his game, and 2 goals and an assist through 2 games is pretty good going for someone who's in his 16th season making an appearance in the Premier League, despite never becoming the star he was touted to be. Where there are stars, there are stooges, and my third stooge for the week is Wout Faes. It may seem a bit unfair to label someone who scored his team's only goal as a stooge, but it was his defending that ultimately helped undo Leicester in their bout against Fulham. For their first goal, Faes is all the way in midfield and behind the ball as Fulham break. Then he kept Alex Iwobi onside by being a few steps behind the rest of the Leicester defense, leading to the game winner. The Belgian always seems to be a few steps out of position, and now he's saying he wants to leave Leicester, which is bold considering his early season performances. Whether he stays or goes, the defense is a pretty bad situation for Leicester. My second stooge is England keeper Jordan Pickford. He was at fault at least in part for 2 goals, the first being his bad touch that let Son in for a tap-in, and the second being when he didn't come to claim a corner ball that ended up in Spurs' third off the head of Romero. Even Son's second goal was one that Pickford would wish he had back, as it managed to sneak in through his legs from a pretty tight angle. It was just a bad day at the office for the England number 1, but I think he'll be bouncing back soon. Oh, how quickly the hero can become the villain. The first stooge of the game week has to be Joshua Zirkzee for blocking his own teammate's finish into an open goal and having it subsequently ruled out for offside. It was clearly unintentional and just an unfortunate product of the laws of physics, but he single-handedly cost United at least a point, which makes him this week's biggest laughingstock. That's all for this week. Subscribe, leave a comment with your star and stooge of the week, and until next time, peace.